Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Public Safety, Transportation and Environment Subcommittee. It is February 20th. Welcome. We are going to switch the order around a little bit because some folks have some things that they must attend to. So we're going to start with the Office of the Attorney General. Thank you. And ask our analyst, Scott Benson, to review the analysis.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. My name is Scott Benson, and I will be presenting the operating analysis for the Office of the Attorney General, or OAG. OAG acts as legal counsel to the state and represents the interests of the state in civil litigation and criminal appeals. Now, as you can see in the operating budget summary on page 1, the fiscal 2027 budget increases by $8.3 million, or 8.9%, to $101.6 million. Section 21 of the fiscal 2026 budget bill added $3.6 million in general funds to provide to the Maryland Legal Services Corporation, or MLSC, and $200,000 for the Consumer Protection Division for a contract to provide additional resources to assist with investigations and law enforcement regarding ticket scalping. OAG should comment on the planned timeline for when a contract will be procured and the funds will be expended. As you can see in Exhibit 1 on page 3, Legal Counsel and Advice is the largest program, comprising 40% or $40.7 million of OAG's fiscal 2027 allowance. In Exhibit 2 on page 4, 70% or $71.3 million of the fiscal 2027 allowance supports 408.45 regular positions. The second largest category is grants for MLSC, which consists of 19% or $19 million of the total allowance. As you can see in Exhibit 3 on page 5, the fiscal 2027 allowance increases by $8.3 million, with the largest changes due to personnel-related expenses. Outside of personnel-related expenses, funding for contractual legal services increases by about $930,000 because of the $1.5 million increase in the mandated appropriation to support the Federal Accountability Unit, or the FAU. As you can see in the personnel data on page 6, as of December 31st, 2025, OAG had 25.2 vacancies. The fiscal 2027 allowance includes 4 additional regular positions, a program manager for the People's Insurance Council, an assistant attorney general for the Consumer Protection Division, a paralegal for the Correctional Litigation Division, and an assistant attorney general for the Correctional Litigation Division. In Exhibit 4 on page 8, you can see that the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit completed 105 total investigations in fiscal 2025, while the number of new cases increased by 22 or 18.6% compared to fiscal 2024. In a report OAG submitted, the agency credited the decrease in activity due to a new intake process for referrals that has lower total caseload but increased efficiency. OAG should discuss current efforts and estimated resources needed to implement the recommendations made in the report to improve unit efficiency. You can see in Exhibit 5 on page 9, the total recoveries obtained by the unit decreased between fiscal 2024 and fiscal 2025 by about $1.2 million to a total of $9.3 million. These recoveries were collected through 19 separate actions, with a single case being responsible for $5.7 million of the fiscal 2025 total. Chapter 746 of 2021 established the Access to Counsel and Evictions Program, or the ACE program, along with the ACE Special Fund to provide legal representation in cases of eviction for qualifying individuals. The ACE program and the ACE Special Fund are administered by MLSC. You can see in Exhibit 6 on page 11 that Anne Arundel, Baltimore, and Prince George's counties, as well as Baltimore City, accounted for 72% of the total number of cases served by ACE in fiscal 2025. Chapter 40 of 2022, as amended by Chapter 641 of 2023, requires that $14 million be distributed annually from the Abandoned Property Fund to the ACE Special Fund, and that the governor includes in the annual budget bill an appropriation of $14 million from the ACE Special Fund to MLSC. These requirements were set to expire after fiscal 2027. However, Chapter 457 of 2025 extends the annual distribution and mandated appropriation through fiscal 2028. As shown in Exhibit 7 on page 12, ACE costs totaled $17.6 million in fiscal 2025, with legal services grants comprising 85% of total expenditures. MLSC has projected that the program will spend $23.7 million for fiscal 2026. However, the fiscal 2026 working appropriation only includes $16.5 million for the program. MLSC determines its projections by looking at areas for expansion or methods to further the program's outreach, which ultimately increases the program's demand. At the fiscal 2025 level of funding, which was $17.6 million, that program was able to serve 12,778 cases, even with $1.1 million supporting efforts to increase outreach. As the program receives $16.5 million in the fiscal 2027 allowance, similar levels of service in fiscal 2025 should be provided in fiscal 2027. Chapter 26 of 2017, or the Maryland Defense Act, authorizes OAG to defend any civil or criminal suit or action based on the federal government's actions that threaten the public interest and the welfare of the state's residents. This act also established a mandated appropriation of $1 million beginning in fiscal 2019, but this was altered by Chapter 97 of 2025, raising the mandated appropriation to $2.5 million. 6 positions were created by the Board of Public Works to staff the FAU. Beginning in March 2025, FAU was fully staffed with 5 attorneys and 1 paralegal, with the unit taking advantage of a partnership with the New York University School of Law to bring in 4 attorney fellows. As you can see in Exhibit 8 on page 14, the state is engaged in 51 lawsuits against federal actions as of January 30th, 2026. On January 1st, 2026, OAG published its 2025 annual report, in which FAU was credited with preserving more than $100 million in education funding and more for other programs. OAG should discuss the federal funds that were preserved and which agencies and programs were impacted. Chapters 5 and 6 of 2023, or the Child Victims Act, repealed the statute of limitations on child sexual abuse lawsuits. Chapter 104 of 2025 altered the act by limiting the potential liability to a claimant from $890,000 to $400,000 if filed on or after June 1st, 2025. As of August 19th, 2025, OAG reported there to be about 11,000 plaintiffs who have filed cases against the Department of Juvenile Services, the Department of Human Services, and the Maryland Department of Health, with the majority being filed before June 1st, 2025. Negotiations remain ongoing, but as of December 21st, 2025, payments to claimants have not begun while cases continue. OAG should comment on the number of plaintiffs who filed cases under the Act, the potential financial costs to the state, and the estimated timeline for current litigation and for payouts to begin. On page 15 are the recommended actions, and the Department of Legislative Services recommends reducing 2 new positions, as OAG has 25.2 vacancies as of December 31st, 2025, reducing $100,000 in special funds for the purpose of in-state conferences and training, the adoption of committee narrative for MLSC regarding operations and future costs for the ACE program, and the adoption of committee narrative requesting a report on the actions taken by the FAU. That concludes my presentation. I can now take your questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? All right, Mr. Attorney General, welcome. Can you please introduce your fellow panelists?
Yes, Madam Chair, and for the record, I'm Attorney General Anthony Brown, and today I'm accompanied with my Chief of Staff, Christian Barrera. I've learned in the 30 years or so doing this work, never leave home without your subject matter expert. So Mr. Barrera is steeped in the numbers, but it's a privilege for me to be able to present sort of our response to the analysis from DLS. I do want to thank Mr. Benson for his thorough analysis and welcome him to the work of the OAG. We look forward to hosting him at the OAG after session so he can familiarize himself more with the work that we do. So again, it's a privilege to be here. I did submit a written response to the analysis, and I want to just highlight a few points, if I may. The Office of the Attorney General, we are 1,059 strong, about 700 attorneys. However, when you look at my budget, the budget supports directly about 440 employees. Because when you look at my budget, I've got about 440 pins with lawyers and non-lawyers. However, that budget indirectly supports the total 1,059. We do all the personnel actions, the hiring, the recruiting, the retention, the development, when necessary, the termination. the training. We provide not all, but some IT support to our attorneys and non-attorney professionals who are at the agency client units on the agency client budgets. So our budget supports not only the 450 that are directly on my budget, but the entire 1,059 directly in the case of HR and indirectly in the case of supplemental IT. So I just kind of wanted to provide a little bit of maybe context or color to this budget. It's unlike what I think you see in most agencies, right? You see their budget, they've got 1,500 people on their budget, 1,500 people do the work of the agency, and that's it. We are 440 on our budget, but 1,059 that actually do the work of the OAG. 87% of our budget is payroll, and we use the other 13% to support some registration programs and the like, and also where possible to invest in technology. We've done a lot of that over the years. We've been very efficient with our dollars and investing in firmware, in software and applications, upgrading hardware like laptops. We also have used that additional 13% that doesn't go to payroll on important functions like training and development of our attorneys. The law is changing, it's ever changing, and it's just imperative that our team, our professionals are staying up on current developments in the law. We are grateful to our clients who invest in the training of those professionals who are on their budget. We look for every opportunity through the National Association of Attorneys General to identify no-cost or very low-cost training. But we do invest in training, and it's important. While Maryland does not have a continuing education requirement for lawyers like many states do, we do embrace, and we have instituted a 12-hour minimum continuing education requirement for all of our lawyers and 6 hours for our non-lawyers. It includes ethics, it includes artificial intelligence, and then specific litigation skills. So I'm highlighting this and spending a lot of time on this to politely reject the recommendation that you cut $100,000 from our training budget. That amounts to about $100 per employee, so we would just ask that you reject that recommendation and allow us to continue making the investments that have been long overdue in the Office of the Attorney General. And our professionals are thriving, and it's because in large part of those investments. So we'd ask that you reject that. We have a vacancy rate of 5% that we're proud of. Post hiring freeze, it was as low as 3.6%. And even at 5%, it reflects one of the lowest vacancy rates in the history of the OAG. And I should point out that the recorded history, unofficially for us, is as far back as Bev Pivot can go, who is our fiscal director and is doing an extraordinary job. To move on, and Mr. Benson mentioned the Federal Accountability Unit. We're proud of the work of the Federal Accountability Unit, the 7 or 8 professionals who are leading that effort and tapping into the expertise of attorneys throughout the OAG. If it's an environmental issue, we're tapping into our team at MDE. If it's a MDOT or transportation issue, we tie into that group. And as a result of this work, we have saved the state hundreds of millions of dollars. 2 examples that are the most clear and specific: over $100 million to MSDE saving in grant program, $12 to $16 million to the AmeriCorps program and the various grants that flow from there. And the list is longer. Some we can't quantify. For example, when the Trump administration says we are going to discontinue federal funding to your transportation program, and now we're talking billions of dollars, and then we successfully go to court and we defeat their efforts to tie that funding to compliance with their, ill-conceived immigration policies or their terrible and wrongheaded and unlawful, what they call DEI policies. When we're successful, and we have been, it's hard to quantify what we've saved the state, because we're talking billions of dollars that were at risk. So we're grateful that the General Assembly, for the first time with the governor, are putting actual general funds into our budget to support the FAU, and I can assure you we will continue to do the extraordinary work that we're doing. And the only thing I take credit for is assembling the team, and I give them all the credit for the progress that they're making. Moving on, if I may, in terms of budget challenges, we did have a general fund reduction of $2.9 million in fiscal 26. And then, as you know, immediately following the last legislative session, there were legislative reductions that were mandated by DBM, and that was an additional $1.8 million for the OAG. So in 2026, we've seen a budget reduction of over $4 million. And I want to highlight a point. Mr. Benson drew your attention to page 2, and a lot of his presentation had to do with the Maryland Legal Services Corporation. And on page 2, it would suggest that we got a general fund increase. But as a reminder, that's just a pass-through general fund stream. The OAG has no discretion, no opportunities to shape, nor would we necessarily want to, but I just wanted to really highlight that it's not our money. And I do believe that, and I would hope that just for kind of accounting and presentation purposes, that the General Assembly would move that reporting, if you will, or even that pass-through over to DHCD. They willingly really assumed that partnership with Maryland Legal Services Corporation last year. They created a program, and they're now actively engaged in the ACE program. So I don't sit here today to say either increase or decrease that funding, but I think for better accounting and sort of presentation, it should be aligned with DHCD. We spoke with Mr. Benson about this. We're hoping that you could see your way to doing that. Moving on, and I'd like to just briefly, if I may, address some of the other recommendations. And again, we have it in writing. I already commented on the training reduction. I would implore you not to reduce that by $100,000. When it comes to deleting the 2 positions, it doesn't really help you in terms of balancing the general fund budget, because those are both special funded positions. In the case of the actuary at the People's Insurance Council, right now, we have a contract with an actuary, and on that contract, they give us about 705 hours a year to do actuarial work. If we hire somebody, we get 1,800 hours a year to do actuarial work, and at a lower cost. So this truly is a cost savings, and it addresses the reality that the Maryland Insurance Administration complaints are now up from 317 last year to 723. So we think this is really a cost-saving opportunity. And I should add that these are not general funds. This position is funded by assessments on insurers. The second position, consumer protection, I know that you, just like when I was both in Congress and in the General Assembly, receive a lot of constituent complaints and concerns, and a large percentage of them deal with consumer protection issues. It's one of our largest divisions. It is probably the one area we have where we being members of the General Assembly and the Office of Attorney General have the greatest overlap. Right, my consumer protection division is the most forward-facing and every day working with the types of issues that are brought to your attention. This particular position is in the home builder registration. We, the General Assembly, even before I think I was in the General Assembly, created the home builder registration program. We register home builders, and complaints about new homes that are built come to us. And we all know that consumers purchasing a home, that's the single largest investment they're probably ever going to make in their life for most consumers. We have a continued problem with home builders, right? And we're having to hold them accountable, having them to make good on the defects and deficiencies in their performance. And right now, we have 280 cases awaiting hearing at the Office of the Administrative Hearing. And in large part, I mean, certainly it's capacity at OAH, but in large part, it's because we need more hands to do the work so we can make whole those consumers who purchased a home and have significant problems with their home builder. So we would ask that you reject that recommendation as well. And with that, Madam Chair, I'll stop and subject myself to questions.
Thank you very much. Senator Rosebud.
Thank you. For you, General. And just General, congratulations for all the work you're doing in conjunction with the other attorneys generals and the other legal groups in fighting the illegal efforts of the Trump administration. It's a big deal, and really, I hear from my constituents all the time. Have we sued them? Have we sued them? And I say, yes, we've sued them. So I always say you make sure that no suit goes unfiled.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate that.
Big win today, Supreme Court.
That's where I was going, but go ahead. Please.
Oh, no, and I haven't read the opinion because I was in the car on the way here, but, big news, the Supreme Court rejected, invalidated, overturned the Trump administration's tariffs, saying that it unlawfully relied on the particular import act that they were relying on, or some emergency act that they relied on that was misplaced, misguided, and illegal. I will take this opportunity to say that we haven't won every action that we brought, but we're sort of doing like better than 500 Hall of Fame, eligible performance. And again, it's not me. I'm the general manager. It's the players on the field that are doing a really good job getting the preliminary injunctions. We get settlements, and where the DOJ says, hey, we're going to concede this one. Those don't get a lot of attention in the media, but that's happening. So we don't win them all, but we're doing our level best.
Well, I had a couple of questions along that line. So was the state a party to the tariff case?
No.
Okay.
And I'm glad that you asked me that. I did make a commitment to the people of Maryland that I would bring actions only if I could draw a line between the things that Marylanders are talking about and the kitchen table and the action that I'm bringing. When this action was filed, I could not, and my team could not find a sufficient basis to say that the tariffs were impacted Maryland. You had a state like Michigan that was leading because they're right up there on the Canadian border. Tariffs, direct import, direct impact on their labor market, et cetera. Now, many months later, we have now seen an impact on all of America. And had there been an opportunity to join, we would have joined. Some cases you can, some you can't. The good thing about this outcome, and you may remember last year, the Supreme Court issued a ruling in the birthright citizenship case. They did not rule on the merits, but they had a ruling regarding universal injunctions, saying that, well, if you're not a party to the case, you won't be able to benefit unless there were some exceptions, like if it was a class action, or in a case like a tariff. You can either have a tariff or you can't. And you can't have a tariff that applies only to Maryland and one that doesn't apply to Michigan, et cetera. So Maryland, notwithstanding that we were not a party to the case, we benefit because the tariffs have been invalidated across the board.
Gotcha. One of the issues, and I just glanced at the newspaper stories as you did, is the question of what's going to happen in terms of refunding money with the tariff decision.
And I think it's important to look at the decision because I don't know what kind of relief has been granted. I mean, on the one hand, the court could say that monies collected have to be returned. How that happens, I don't know. It's not uncommon to see a court opinion where they acknowledge the practical realities that it's difficult, if even possible, to sort of meaningfully and effectively sort of provide relief in terms of returning monies, et cetera. But we're going to all have to read that.
Absolutely. The only reason I wanted to raise the issue, not to ask you to do the legal analysis today, but I think Maryland consumers deserve their money back. So I think you should explore that to see if there is a way we can make sure Maryland consumers get their money back. So that was one question. Second question is.
And just to kind of clarify on that, what it would be is that the importers would get their money back, and then do the importers have to give the money back to the consumers? And again, that's going to be pretty tricky and complicated, and looking at the opinion, and that may not even be answered in the opinion. So, but we'll take a look at that.
Well, I have a bill requiring disclosure of tariffs. And I'm lucky to have as a constituent a fellow who ran the tariff administration program of the United States government, who's an expert on this. So I'd be happy to connect you with him if you want some help on that issue, seriously. Because he figured out how we could do the disclosure stuff. So I think it's a very important issue economically for people. It's all about affordability. Second question is, one of the, you said you think you all have like a 500 batting average, which is great. But let me ask you more generally. I think there's a perception by a lot of people that I talk to that because so many Supreme Court decisions seem to not have been as direct and clear as we hope this one is today, that it's great to fight back, it's great to go to court, but it's not that big a protection because of the Supreme Court. I'm just interested in your broad view, because you are deep into this issue with all your colleagues and all the lawyers working on this stuff. I mean, how much confidence at this point, can't predict the future, but given our experience over the last year, how much confidence should people have that the efforts that you and your colleagues are making to fight back to the courts will be successul?
Look, I maintain confidence in the Supreme Court. It's not the Supreme Court that I would have assembled if I were president, right? But I have confidence. I think that, this Supreme Court, they do believe in the principles of federalism and states' rights. Sometimes we like states' rights, sometimes we don't, right? Depending on what the issue is, but states' rights. And we're in a position right now where many of our cases, we allege that state sovereignty is being violated. So that is a principle that a majority of the court, I think, embraces. I think you can look at a number of decisions by this court that would, I think, warrant some optimism that we have a fighting chance for cases. This one today.
Yep.
Also, when you look at, and I mentioned the birthright citizenship case, where the court did not rule on the merits, and maybe could have, but they didn't, which is a good indication. I also look at cases like the Abrego-Garcia case, where while Mr. Abrego and Garcia and his family suffered, enduring, what will be enduring pain and trauma from that experience, the Supreme Court in that case said that you will, and I'm paraphrasing, facilitate his return. They could have been a little bit crisper in their language, and the Supreme Court did not, facilitate the return in days. It took, I think, 3 weeks, but I think that was a positive ruling. They could have, Supreme Court could have perhaps said national security, foreign policy, political question, we're not getting involved. They didn't. They opined on that in a way that required the administration to do something. Now, on the flip side of the coin, we saw the decision coming out of the appellate review, the Supreme Court's review of the D.C. Circuit regarding presidential immunity. And whether the president can be held liable for certain conduct or alleged misconduct during the presidency. That was a bad ruling. It was a surprise to everyone, most people. So, again, you're not going to get 100% of the rulings that you want from this court. That's true with any court. But I'm going to maintain my optimism in part because I think that's what we do as elected officials. We stay optimistic. And because we are experiencing some victories with this court.
Last question, very brief, Madam Chair. Do I gather from the budget analysis and Bureau's response that you feel we did boost your resources for protecting for the Maryland Defense Act last year? Are you confident that the budget this year is adequate for what needs to be done over the next year?
I know you want a yes or no question, but I always have. I do have to answer. I'm back. I have to answer really in a 3-year window.
Okay. All right.
At the rate that we're going.
Yes, fair.
The OAG is going to. We're going to be bankrupt. That's a harsh statement to make in a budget hearing. Over the last 3 years, more and more of our general funds have been reduced, requiring us to focus on our special funds.
Yeah.
Our consumer recovery first, in the first 1 or 2 years of my term. Last year, because we saw that wasn't sustainable, we asked and you granted us the authority to go into our securities registration fund, which funds the security division, but now today is funding actually the lawyers that support you. That comes out of my securities registration fund. The lawyers that support the judiciary now come out of my security registration fund. 2 special funds, and they are declining. That is why, and thank you very much for asking the question, because my chief of staff is going to would have reminded me after the hearing that I forgot to mention. That is why we have in House Bill 705, which creates an enforcement recovery fund. If both the governor and the General Assembly are going to ask or require the OAG to rely more on special funds, I'm coming back and I'm asking that I can retain more of the recoveries that I receive, the penalties that I receive, which all go to the general fund. And in House Bill 705, we're asking, let us, for any recovery over $100,000, let us keep how much? 25% for no more than $7.5 million over the course of the year. And at the end of the year, any amounts in that enforcement fund above $7.5 million will go to the general fund. So it's not for me to hoard and store, but it's also in the proposed legislation to be used for enforcement. So what we're basically saying is, let us self-fund. If you want us to do the more and more special funds, then allow us to hold on to more of that recovery. And of course, ensuring that restitution goes to consumers and renters, et cetera. We don't want their money. We want to continue fighting for that. But for the penalties, let us share in the good work that we're doing.
I understand. You mentioned securities registration fees. Do you have other registration fees in the office?
Senator, you must be looking at my sheet here, because the chief of staff would have said that was the second bill I didn't mention that we're asking for. We have consumer protection fees and we have securities fees. We have a number of securities fees. Broker dealer. Last year you increased that. The broker dealer. We got some. The general fund got some. We've got a lot of different registration fees and securities, and I don't have them off the top of my head. We have submitted them to you. Many of those, both in securities and consumer protection, they haven't been raised since you established them 30 years ago. And interestingly enough, and I don't speak for the industry, but I think their silence speaks for itself. Last year when we asked for the increase in the broker-dealer fee, there wasn't a peep from the industry. I think the industry understands that a robust securities division is good for the market. Right, it enables us to do our oversight, to do our investigations, our enforcement.
So do you have the authority to raise the fees?
No, I've come to you and asked for you in a bill.
So you have legislation this session?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, if you can follow up with us on that.
Yep, I will. And we also did a state survey, not a 50-state survey, to give you comparative data on what other states charge.
Super, thank you, Madam
If you
Chair.
could share that with us, that would be helpful. And I also I had looked up that the bill hearing was canceled. Is that in the House side? Was that?
Just getting moved.
Okay, so no.
I was unavailable and
Gotcha.
we feel as if.
So that's going to, okay.
Yeah.
And do you have a bill on the fee?
The fee is going to be being proposed as a BRFA amendment to the budget.
It is not in the BRFA though, correct? Or-
Not currently, no.
Okay,
No, I don't think the governor put any fees in.
right.
Correct.
I didn't think so, but I just wanted to ask.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Senator Sulling.
Thank you, Attorney General, for all the information. Just got one question that literally puzzles me, because we see that the DLS recommended deleting the 2 positions, but you're saying that you would have to hire those positions to get these hours. And I'm wondering why you couldn't just reclassify to save not getting those positions and still get those hours. That they would still reward you for that because you're trying to save, which to me makes a lot of sense. Just reclassifying somebody and having the people that you already have. I think it would be more of a benefit to doing that for the state of Maryland. And also, and I understand your reasoning in that for the People's Insurance Council, but the Customer Protection Division, I think this is something I think we should be doing. I mean, you should be rewarded for saving money for the state of Maryland, not hiring somebody, because we again, you said we put a freeze for a very good reason. But for being cost effective as a state, I think they should reward you in some way for having somebody just reclassify. I think it's a benefit. I mean, why can't we do something like that?
And if I could, I would, and I don't say that without supporting that. And what I mean is 3 years ago, and again 2 years ago, and again this year, I have come in, as most agencies do, and I've asked for over-the-target positions to do important work. And the response that I receive is reclassify, and we did. I came in, I think 2 years ago, I had 23 over-the-target requests. I was told to reclassify, and I did. I reclassified to put more people into IT, into HR. You may remember I started my presentation by saying my budget of 440 supports the IT and HR for almost 1,100. So I asked for more pins to help me do that. I was told to reclassify, and I did. So I increased IT, I increased HR. I increased lawyers in certain positions. You helped me do contractual conversions to regular pins so I could recruit, hire, and retain more lawyers and non-lawyers. So I've done it. I'm now at the bottom, though, of the there's no more in the well. When I say I have a 5% vacancy, it's not 5% of sort of like, oh, they're just in the closet or, you know, in the corner where I can use them somehow. Almost line for line on that 5%. I can tell you that 3 of them are in the hiring process, 2 of them are critical roles, that there's no way I can reclassify that. I could show you that list, and we will do that. Good. I don't have the pins to reclassify. I've exhausted that. I did that over the last 3 years. We've reclassified many, many pins.
But it's good to know.
Yeah.
It's good to know.
I agree with you. I think, look, it is, look, I'm speaking for my agency. I'm not speaking for any other agency. You know, in the Office of the Attorney General, and one of the things you'll notice in our fiscal notes, compare our fiscal notes today with our fiscal notes of years ago, and every time you gave us a new requirement and we did need new people, what did we ask for? Lawyers. Oh, we want the OAG to do this, more lawyers. OAG to do this, more lawyers. I said to my team, no, stop. We don't need lawyers to do everything. I need analysts, I need paralegals, I need administrative, I need mediators. So now our fiscal notes are light on attorneys and heavier on non-attorneys, which are less expensive, that can do the job. So some of those reclassifications that I mentioned were actually lawyer positions to non-lawyer positions. So we are really right-sizing the agency to be cost-effective, to be effective, to be efficient, to achieve savings, and we'll continue to do that. The only problem is I just don't have the vacancies now to do any more of that.
And I just wanted to comment on the Francis Scott Key, the ongoing issue with that. I've been working with transportation, but I know you have too, with SHA. And we know it's an ongoing deal, but the currently against the deli that you do have. Can you talk briefly just about that and what's going on with that?
Sure, I can give you some information, Senator. So we have a lawsuit, as you know, against the vessel interests. That's the owners and the management company. We call them the vessel interests, the shoreside interests of the ship. And we filed a lawsuit in September of the year of the incident. We have a trial date set before Federal District Court Judge Bradar on June 1st, and he set aside 4 weeks. It may very well go more than 4 weeks this June. We have wrapped up discovery, both fact and expert. We're in the process of developing our expert reports, as is the defendants in this case. The issue before Judge Bradar under maritime law is whether or not the vessel interests can cap their liability to the value of the ship and its cargo, as you know, which is only $50 to maybe $70 million.
50, yeah.
Yep, 50. We are, you know, you never can predict an outcome here, but you know, we are really confident in the case that we have, that we will present at trial. Judge Bradar said in the scheduling conference back in September, October of the year that we filed, that if he's ever seen a case that ought to settle, it's this one. So he's really encouraging the parties, settle. While, like I said, the trial has to do with liability, settlement has to do with dollars. So we are engaged in good faith discussions. Judge Badar has appointed a magistrate judge to be a mediator. We owe them a report next month. So whether or not we're going to be able to mediate and settle before trial is to be seen. And what we are doing is preparing to put on the very best case on behalf of the state, and we're confident. We think it'll take Judge Badar probably until several months to issue an opinion. There's going to be a lot of information that he's going to be presented with, and then assuming it doesn't settle, assuming that we get a good result on the liability issue in federal court, then we would go to the second stage because it's bifurcated, which is liability, right? Damages, right? We've established liability, we've busted the cap, assuming that happens, we're now talking damages. And we could file either in federal or state court to recover the damages on behalf of the state.
I know the state has that lawsuit. Do you know overall how many lawsuits are out there right now? And I know, I think the city, maybe the counties, but do you know how many are out there right now?
I don't have that on my, we will get that to you. We know the number, easy to get, and we'll provide that to you.
And just one more question or statement. I've met with some of our businesses that have been really affected because of how long now. At one time it was 28, now it's 2030, and they're concerned because there's a lot of businesses that are losing business altogether because of this. I know it's such a tragedy, and I just don't know how much more we can do to help out some of our local small businesses that they really depend upon this type of business. And so it affects my district a lot, and I know it affects the other side, that district as well. I don't know if there's something more that we can do to help them out. And I don't want to lose our businesses because our mom and pop shops are what it's all about, our nation. And it's just troubling to find these things out and to talk to some of our businesses. So I don't know, again, I'll say that I don't know what more we can do to help these businesses out. I know there was a small period of time that we could when it did happen, but I just think the years to come, I mean, it's really, really going to affect some of our businesses because of how long it's going to take to do these repairs and replacement. So I don't know what more we could do.
So what I'll say is in the immediate aftermath of that, General Assembly, you stepped up, you passed the Port Act, which did provide some relief. That's now a policy and kind of fiscal decision that you are going to make, whether you want to do more. You should know that in our suit and in the damages that we seek to recover are items like what we spent on the Port Act. And if there were future programs like that, we would certainly seek to include that in the damages that we seek to recover. Our damages, and I'm talking about large categories of damages, not specific, economic damage to the state, like lost tax revenues, lost tolls. Obviously, the damage to the bridge and what the replacement would be. And there are different sort of models on how you determine what the appropriate damages are. The salvage piece, we'll seek recovery for that. So there are a lot of categories of damages we're familiar with, experienced with all of them, and we will be doing a full court press at the damages stage to recover as much as we can on behalf of the state of Maryland, and then it'll be on the General Assembly to, as a policy decision, decide how we, if we continue to do so, support businesses that have been impacted.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to follow up, and you discussed this when you talked about the effect, the monetary and economic effect and impact to the state on your federal lawsuits against this administration. So, and I totally understand that there are some that you can't monetize, but is there a list of ones that you could share with us?
Yes, we will do that because I asked my team to do just that because I know you're going to ask, the public asks, I'm interested in knowing, and we have done that. So we will make that available to you. I do know that in the recommendations from DLS, there is a recommendation around reporting, I believe, for the Federal Accountability Unit. And we provided an informal report in October. We do provide a lot of information online, but we understand that we do need to get your report. We just would like to work with you on making sure that the elements in the report really make sense and that you're asking for things that we can give you. and certainly what you're asking here, Madam Chair, we can certainly give you. So we could include that as an element in the report, but even short of the formal requirement for report, we'll get you that information.
Thank you. And I'm just going to raise a flag about the bill that you're discussing, the, what is it, 705? Is that any settlement or only those in securities, consumer, only in particular?
It's only in those three.
Okay.
It does not interfere with the opioid recoveries because you already set
Right.
up a fund for that.
Or access of counsel?
Exactly,
Yeah.
because the way the bill is written, it's, and I don't know the statutory language, but, recovery for everything except for those that are already sort of
Okay,
accounted
I
for in
didn't see
statute.
that in just skimming,
Yeah.
but that is something that
Yep.
is near and dear
We're
to my
not,
heart.
we're not
Yeah.
disrupting that. We
Okay.
recognize that the General Assembly has an interest in that, and it works for us as well.
Okay. And one last question. You mentioned here, but I don't think I heard you mention your case management system needing to modernize technology. Who, are you working with another agency on that? Is there a status of that, or that's just a wish on your wish list?
So a combination, right, in that, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to elaborate on that. It is in our written testimony. The case management system, we are going to be sitting down with DBM immediately following the General Assembly session. And the Secretary asked us the same question, who you're working with. We are working with Do It on that. Your Office of the Attorney General is not in the 21st century when it comes to matter management, case management, document review. I will share with you that it's not uncommon for us to have to get assistant counsel in a case. That's outside counsel, okay, which costs more than having my attorneys do it. Not because we don't have the capability and capacity as lawyers, but because we don't have the capacity for document management. And in this ever-increasing complex world of discovery, and with the digital and electronic records that are maintained, discovery is overwhelming. And it's not just true in Maryland, this is a trend. And so sometimes we have to get an outside law firm just because they have the infrastructure to handle the discovery. That's just unacceptable. It's not an efficient way to provide legal services to a client like the state of Maryland. So this is probably what's the number we're estimating, just off the top of our head? How many million? 6 was it, or 7?
Approximately 10, yeah.
This is a $10 million, multi-year, requiring design and build. Because what you have now is, I have agency client units that represent, you got Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, they're about to testify. They're big litigation. We got a lot of litigation there, a lot of at Health Department, a lot in the environment, I can go on. And they're all operating, not all of them, but many of them, out of their own sort of document management, case management system. Some of them are operating out of Excel spreadsheets for case management. That's unacceptable. I can't, if you ask me today, produce me a report on such and such for all the litigation in the OAG, what it costs, it'll take from now until next session for me to get you the answer. That's unacceptable. I need a matter management system so I can more efficiently and effectively deliver legal services. So we're sitting down with DBM. We're already talking to Do It. We had drafted an RFI just to get a feel, but we held off on that. We're working on an RFP, which obviously we can't put out until we've got clearance, obviously, that this is something you guys can do. But we think it's a $10 million project to get everyone under the same matter management, document management, case management. We can start litigating more in-house. We're going to save you money that way. So I'm glad you asked about it. There's no dollar ask this session, but we put it in our response because we know we need to kind of start socializing this with you, working with DBM, working with Do It, so we can get this system going sooner rather than later.
Okay. Thank you very much. Senator Rosebud?
Drilling down on this issue. I mean, we can't be the only major law firm in the United States that has this issue. So I don't really understand why this isn't sort of a software as a service.
Well, I'll tell you, one thing, we heard from the Office of the Public Defender, the same exact issue.
Right, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in other states and private law firms, and I mean.
Right. What we certainly don't want to have to do is when I say design and build, I don't
Right.
mean sort of like from scratch. That those days are over.
Right.
So there are products out there, but any product that you see is going to have to be tailored to meet the needs of your agency. Even, we may be doing consumer protection a little bit different than another state. So we might look to see what they have, say, okay, that works, but we've got to tailor it because you've given us responsibilities and obligations.
I agree.
Yeah. So no, it's not. I think I think probably mischaracterized it when I said design build.
Okay.
But there is a design component to it because also if I'm going to have one, maybe two, I'd like to have one system that does all OAG. What is needed at the state pension and retirement is a lot different than what I need at my criminal division. So I've got to make sure that this one system, this one product can be tailored and modified to meet the needs of my different types of units. There are some common things like PIA, and then there are a lot of things that are different from unit to unit.
I understand. I would just, not that I'm an expert on this at all, but I mean, Salesforce is really what I'm most familiar with in terms of a broadly used software. That there's a whole industry of folks who customize software to particular kinds of customers. I find it hard to believe there isn't that in the document management area you're talking about. So
Right, and I'm confident that it's out there as well. We're going to find
Great.
it, and that's part of the
Okay,
process.
thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Have a
Thank you
good
very
weekend.
much.
Thank you, Mr. Benson. All right, we are going to do the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services corrections. Oh, I'm sorry. We do have somebody who has signed up. Sorry, apologies. Thank you. To testify, is Michelle Coelho here? A Mother's Cry? No. Yes? Oh,
I'm sorry, I think that's supposed to be for the DPSCS, I made a mistake.
okay, no problem. All
I
right.
think I signed up as information, so I was paying close attention.
Okay, thank you.
Bye now.
Bye-bye, thank you. Okay, we're going to invite Josh Weinstock to walk through the analysis for us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. My name is Josh Weinstock, and today I'll be presenting the fiscal 2027 budget for DPSCS Corrections. The budget decreases by about $23 million, or 2%, to $1.1 billion. Starting with a few performance metrics on page 3. The average daily population, or ADP, of sentenced offenders in DPSCS custody has increased annually since the pandemic. However, the growth rate has slowed. In fiscal 2024, it increased by about 4%. In 2025, it increased by 2%, and it has grown just 1% in the first 2 quarters of fiscal 2026. The overall population has declined nearly 20% since 10 years ago in fiscal 2016. Turning to Exhibit 2 on page 5, the exhibit shows the monthly ADP since calendar year 2019, with the dotted line representing the population if pre-pandemic trends had continued, and the light shaded area representing the population if current trends continue. In April 2025, the incarcerated population exceeded the pre-pandemic population trends for the first time. As of December 2025, the population was more than 350 individuals higher than the pre-pandemic trend line. Exhibit 3 on page 6 shows the share of individuals across age groups. The average age of individuals in custody was 39 years old in fiscal 25, which has stayed relatively constant over the past 5 years. The under 30 age population has seen the largest change in the past decade. It shrank from 34% of the population in fiscal 2016 to only 26% of the population in fiscal 2025. Turning to Exhibit 4 on page 7, the average length of stay in fiscal 2025 was 7.4 years, which is a 13% decline from 5 years ago. Most sentenced individuals in custody in fiscal 2025 were incarcerated for violent crimes as their most serious offense, which relates to Exhibit 5 on page 8, showing the incarcerated population by sentence length. The exhibit shows that roughly half of those in DPSCS custody are serving sentences 15 years or longer. Moving on to the budget, the allowance contains proposed deficiency appropriations that increase the fiscal 26 working appropriation by $57 million. The two largest deficiency appropriations are $28 million to cover shortfalls related to lower than expected vacancies and $17 million to cover fiscal 2025 shortfalls in inmate medical health care costs. Of the $1.1 billion allowance, $659 million supports regular personnel, mainly for employing correctional officers. Exhibit 6 on page 10 shows the other portions of the budget. The inmate medical care contract is nearly 1/4 of the spending. Exhibit 7 on page 11 breaks down the nearly $23 million proposed budget decrease. Major proposed decreases include $22 million in salary adjustments, $15 million in overtime expenses, and $6 million in supplies and materials for the Maryland Correctional Enterprises, or MCE. There are also $18.3 million in cost savings from the planned closure of the Maryland Correctional Institution at Jessup, or MCIJ, which would be partially offset by transfers to other facilities. The planned closure of MCIJ was discussed in further detail in the DPSCS overview analysis. Moving on to personnel, the allowance contains 4,899 regular positions, which is a net decrease of 24 positions. Exhibit 8 on page 14 shows the net reduction for personnel broken out by facility. There is a reduction of 305 positions due to the closure of MCIJ and a corresponding 304 personnel increase at Jessup Correctional Institution. There are 3 issues discussed in this analysis. The first relates to the treatment of transgender individuals under the care of the state. Transgender individuals in the prison system are subject to high rates of violence and sexual abuse from correctional officers and fellow inmates, and there have been numerous settlements over the years following instances of violence, sexual assault, harassment, and unwarranted uses of solitary confinement. From calendar year 2022 to 2025, there were 6 settlements to transgender individuals, totaling just under $1 million. In fiscal 2025, the department reported 119 transgender individuals incarcerated in its facilities, or less than 1% of the total incarcerated population. Current DPSCS policy mandates that transgender individuals be housed based on their physical genitalia and housing be informed by a risk assessment based on a number of factors. There are 2 types of restrictive housing: disciplinary and administrative housing. Disciplinary housing is when a person is removed from the general population after they've been found guilty at a hearing for violating departmental rules. Administrative segregation can be used for several reasons, such as protection or if someone is awaiting a disciplinary hearing. Transgender individuals make up less than 1% of the overall population, but make up 1.7% of the total time individuals spent in restrictive housing placements in fiscal 2025. In other words, transgender individuals were 2.7 times more likely to be in restrictive housing than the overall population. Exhibit 9 shows the estimated days the overall population spent in restrictive housing. From fiscal 2021 to 2025, the overall population saw a nearly 48% increase in the total number of days spent in disciplinary housing, and a 21% decrease in the estimated days spent in administrative housing. Exhibit 10 shows the completion of housing transfers and compares transgender and cisgender housing transfers. Transgender housing transfers remain relatively constant in fiscal 2025 after increasing over the past several years, while cisgender housing transfers increased in nearly every category. In fiscal 2025, transgender housing transfers made up 1.2% of the total housing moves. The Prison Rape Elimination Act, or PREA, requires individuals at intake to be screened for risk of being sexually assaulted and the risk of committing sexual assault. The department tracks 916 vulnerable individuals across 17 facilities, with the goal of preventing those individuals from being housed with those who might pose a threat. PREA complaints are any any allegation of sexual abuse, sexual harassment, or threat of violence towards a vulnerable individual. From January 2022 to June 2025, the department received nearly 600 PREA complaints, 29 of which have been substantiated, or just under 5%. Among those complaints, 63 of them involved transgender individuals, 3 of which were substantiated, also about 5%. Administrative complaints consist of grievances by incarcerated individuals regarding housing, programs, commissary, and access to services, including medical care. The department did not break out administrative complaints by transgender and cisgender populations. Exhibit 11 on page 20 shows the breakdown of administrative complaints from fiscal 2022 to 2025. During that time, the department received 670 administrative complaints, of which 40 complaints were determined to be meritorious or meritorious in part, representing nearly 6%. Complaints involving staff allegations, including assault, harassment, discrimination, or excessive force, accounted for over 300 of the total complaints during this period. Of those, 5 complaints, or less than 2%, were found to be meritorious or meritorious in part. Language in the fiscal 26 budget bill withheld $100,000 in general funds until the department submitted a report on the treatment of transgender individuals, which was submitted on October 2nd, 2025. DLS determined the report to be in compliance with the budget language and recommends the release of the general funds. The second issue in this analysis is an update on the Reentry Passport Program beginning on page 21. The program aims to provide pre-release individuals with online access to their identifying documents, such as Social Security cards and birth certificates. This program has faced significant delays since the pilot program in fiscal 2023. Under DPSCS policy, case managers are responsible for offering individuals within 180 days of their release the opportunity to apply for documents such as birth certificates, Social Security cards, and other paperwork. DPSCS reported that in calendar year 2025, over 1,200 document accounts have been created in the program. However, creating an email account is required for gaining access to one's account, and incarcerated individuals do not have the ability to create email accounts while incarcerated. The department did not indicate how many individuals had gained access to their accounts. The department should comment on the number of individuals that have gained access to their documents through the Reentry Passport Program by fiscal year. DLS also recommends adopting committee narrative, requesting a report on the continued Reentry Passport Program rollout. The last issue I will discuss is regarding the women's pre-release programming at MCIW, which is a high-security facility. Chapter 16 of 2021 mandated that DPSCS build and begin operating a pre-release unit for women by November 2023. The Women's Pre-Release Center has faced several delays and remains in the planning and design phase. This project is now expected to be completed in fiscal 2031. The fiscal 2027 proposed capital budget does not provide funding for the project. While the facility has been delayed, DPSCS is still required to provide pre-release programming to incarcerated women in its custody at MCIW. This programming is called Project Fresh and provides participants with access to educational and vocational training, trauma-informed therapy, parenting workshops, and substance use disorder treatment. Community partners play a significant role in offering additional programming. Project Fresh has historically struggled with low participation rates. In fiscal 2025, participation in the programming as a percent of the total women's pre-release population varied between 38% in February 2025 to 81% in June 2025. Project Fresh does not receive dedicated funding for programming. It has one program coordinator based in the unit and a volunteer coordinator who also provides services to the entire MCIW population. DPSCS should comment on its long-term plans for the Women's Pre-Release Program, given the absence of funding for the New Life Skills and Reentry Center for Women in the fiscal 2027 capital budget. DLS also recommends adopting committee narrative requesting a report from DPSCS about Project Fresh participation rates and programming. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? I actually have a question. Can you explain to me, there's a $22 million, 22.5 salary adjustment. and associated fringe benefits, a decrease in that. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I can probably get you more information about that. There were, you mean in the proposed budget decrease? Yeah, I can get you more information on that.
Okay, that'd be helpful. Thank you. Madam Secretary, welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Heddleman, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Carolyn J. Scruggs. I am the Secretary of the Maryland Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services. With me today is Keith Dickens, the Acting Commissioner of the Division of Corrections, and Ellen Rappaport, our Executive Director of Reentry Services. As always, we appreciate our collaboration with Mr. Weinstock and his hard work on the analysis. In the analysis, DLS asked us to respond to 2 issues and 2 recommended actions. You do have my written testimony. In regards to the reentry passport, nearly 3,000 upgrades of vital documents have been completed by case management. Vital documents continue to be requested and uploaded into what's formerly called the MD Think portal and now referred to as MD Benefits portal. It is important to note that it is not mandatory for incarcerated individuals to apply, and DPSCS case management can only submit applications for processing. Additionally, the functions of creating email accounts and linking existing accounts are not available while individuals are incarcerated. An email account is required for gaining access to the passport portal. With the support of DPP agents and the availability of internet cafes at each DPP site, the supervised individuals have access to the passport portal. They're able to create an email, link important documents that have been uploaded. They may also access other state resources through this portal. In regards to our long-term plans for women's pre-release services, Project Fresh, or fulfilling reentry services before going home, programming and pre-release housing units will remain in place as long-term plans are to continue to identify educational programming opportunities to engage with existing new community partners and to support the Project Fresh pre-release unit until the new pre-release center is constructed. Project Fresh has 12 ongoing programs geared to the unique needs of the current population within that unit, with 4 new programs being added this fiscal year. The majority of the program participation occurs on-site within the Project Fresh pre-release unit. On-site participation allows the staff to monitor attendance closely, provide individualized guidance for both the participant and the community partners. Many community partners will provide program sessions both on the Project Fresh site as well on the main compound. Efforts remain focused on ensuring all women preparing for release, regardless of security level, fully benefit from everything that is available in programming and reentry services. I highly encourage you to come and see Project Fresh, to talk to our incarcerated women, and see the many things we're doing to prepare them for reentry. Project Fresh was born of a department's commitment to provide women continuing access to quality, comprehensive pre-release programming regardless of their location. The department and DGS completed the process for site selection of the new Women's Pre-Release Center and was ready to proceed into the design phase in the fall of 2025. In response to the feedback and concerns received from the Women's Pre-Release Equity Coalition, the project has been temporarily paused by both agencies. My department stands poised to move forward in the construction of the standalone Women's Pre-Release facility following any modification to the site selection. DLS has recommended also that DPSCS provide 2 reports on the continued reentry passport program rollout and Project Fresh participation rates. The department agrees with these recommendations, and we are here to answer any additional questions. But before I close, I do want to talk with you about our department's efforts to expand those reentry services, to advance rehabilitation, and to meet the increasing needs of our population and the rest of some of our staff recruitment. I am very proud of the hard work our human resources and our Human Services Department has facilitated with hiring 684 correctional officers in 2025, a 75% increase over the prior year performance, and the highest hired number in 10 years. In total, over 1,100 new employees joined the department last year, and we were dedicated to continuing this success, not only with further vacancy reduction, but in increasing training and support to promote retention. Lastly, a concern was raised yesterday in the House PSA Subcommittee regarding behavior of the healthcare contractor within our facilities. I am aware of this incident and directly addressed it with the vendor. I want to assure this body that at no point was medical care to the incarcerated population disrupted, nor was facility security compromised. We are committed to our responsibility to hold contractual service providers accountable for honoring their commitment to the state of Maryland. And again, I am happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you very much. Other questions? Okay, Senator Sally?
I'm gonna probably go back and forth. Do we have a timeline for the reports that have to be filed, the ones you were just talking about? I know that you might have said, but.
I can get that for you.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, because I think it's important. I mean, some of the reports at times we see, they're lacking at times. But I think it's important that we're ahead of them. So that's just saying, you know, making sure we have a timeline to make sure we get those reports, that's all. Thank you.
Senator Rosapel?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about recruitment. You know, over the last year, kind of what's been working and what hasn't been working?
We have been aggressive recruiting. We've been doing job fairs. We even at our job fairs, we have been having conditional offers of employment because we were able to do many of our processes right there on site. I will be honest with you, it is still a big challenge in the East and the Far West. So those facilities are the facilities that you will see that have lower staffing levels.
Right, we talked about that.
Yes,
Yeah.
but continuously in the Baltimore and Jessup region, we continue to have sufficient applicants so that we are continuing going through that process. But even though, and I'll give you an example, if we have 1,500 in the hopper that are waiting to be processed, some of those individuals are getting eliminated because of background check. Mm-hmm. Some of them are even making it to the academy and getting eliminated because they're not passing the academy. So it doesn't mean that we're going to be able to actually put those 1,500 right into the facilities. We do have several academies going on right now. We actually have an academy graduating in Hagerstown on Friday, and we have another academy running at ECI right now, and we have an academy at PCTC that's going on.
What are the initial recruitment efforts that are most successful?
I would say that it's word of mouth, be honest with you, because one of the things that any state employee that recommends someone and they actually get through that academy, there is a bonus for that state employee. So many of our employees will recommend individuals to apply as applicants, and we'll get them through. But I've also seen where we have had very large job fairs, where we brought our fingerprint specialists there, where we brought our polygraph people there. And we had lines around the corner. We had lines. We did them at several schools, and we were able to facilitate. And that's how we got those numbers last year up, because they went through that process, and as they cleared, we were able to have everybody there at HR to touch them so that we could give them that conditional offer.
Is the bonus for referrals, is that true throughout state government, or is that just corrections?
I know that we have it. I'm not sure whether it is throughout state.
And what is the bonus?
It's $500 for referral, but also if you choose to work in the Eastern Shore or either Western Maryland, there's an additional $2,500 for that individual coming on.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Sally?
Just the opportunity to promotions, having the opportunity for those to get promoted and the proper training. Are we making sure that it's more than available to have that opportunity to promote? And is there any more that we need to do to making sure that the training is, I mean, you need to be certified or qualified to do certain things, but you have the people within that has we talked about OJT. Mm-hmm. And that's really important. So having that qualification and moving up and just knowing the job. I think that's really important. But are we making sure that we are within, because I know we're short. And is there any other things, are we brainstorming? Are we talking to others that can be a part of this and making sure that we can get more people to be available? So, you know, we talk a lot about the shortage that we have in a lot of our departments. And we've been trying to work that out. I know corrections have promoted and those bonuses are out there. But I just want to make sure that we're doing the right things and the right things are in place. So that's all.
So again, thank you for that question. And what I'll tell you that is training is essential to any promotion. And one of the things that we have been challenged with in the past is most of our training was on-the-job training. We do have a new supervisors training that everyone, when you get to the rank of lieutenant, you are required to go to the academy to attend that new supervisors training, because now you are a first line supervisor and train actually how to deal with the personnel that you're dealing with, managing behaviors, all of the type things that you need to know as a supervisor. We also work very closely with the National Institute of Corrections, and trust me, whatever free training we can find, we bring to our facilities. PCTC works very closely with other law enforcement entities and correctional entities, and sometimes we actually combine classes and hop with each other, so that National Institute of Corrections, they usually require we have at least 25 people in a class. So we'll do a joint training with them. Those efforts are out there. Can we continue to grow? Absolutely, we can continue to grow in that area. But I think one thing that would be important to share with you is that one of our challenges is that many people don't want to take that next step. We're finding the sergeant level is where a lot of people find comfort and leave, because once you get past that sergeant level, you don't make overtime anymore. And then the other disadvantage that we're having when we promote someone, especially if it is a sergeant into a lieutenant, now we have that correctional officer vacancy again. So there's good and bad for both, but training is always essential. We're always looking for new avenues, and we welcome, you know, any ideas that you have as well.
Senator Lewis-Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to clarify, is that bonus for any referral or for a referral that's actually hired?
Which bonus? The $500 bonus? Yeah. The $500 bonus, you have to successfully complete the academy for the employee to get the bonus.
Okay, so there is a criteria.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions. I want to talk about the reentry passport and how, I mean, this has been an issue that has been going on for a long time. And I understand and totally appreciate that people can't have email addresses, and that is a barrier. But that doesn't seem to me to be an unsurmountable barrier. And I understand that they have to also do it. You can't do it for them, or your employees can't do it for them. However, this is not rocket science. I mean, right? And so I guess I just can't wrap my brain around not figuring out the steps to get people Medicaid, to get them other things that are going to support them. Most people behind bars are coming out, and most of them are going to be in need, and I'm going to hazard a guess here, are going to qualify for a lot of public benefits. And so I mean, that to me rises to in a really, really high priority in helping them to become successful citizens on the outside.
So if I may, one of the things, and I'll let Ellen finish up where I start, but one of the things that we recognize is what you said. And so what we've done is we've begun training our DPP agents, because many of these people are they're continuing in the community, but they're being supervised. So our DPP agents are being trained to not only upload documents that may have been missed while they were there, but to issue them those emails, help them set up those email accounts. That way, when they come into the DPP office, we have what are called our cafes, and they're just like, we based it based on like a little Starbucks that you can go into, and they have access to those computers where they can either download their information now, or since they have an email, they can use their phone to actually download that information. Ellen, anything that I missed?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for that question. Reentry is really near and dear to my heart and the department's heart. In terms of the passport portal, what we're looking at are uploaded documents that the incarcerated individuals actually receive the hard copy in their release envelopes. This is just copies that are made if they lose it or if they need a backup plan. In terms of access to medical assistance, we are currently enrolling our incarcerated individuals before they get out. And so that provides that access to what I would call services in the community. And we're working with our major partners to do that, Maryland Department of Health and other folks to enroll.
Do you have any relationship with the Cash Campaign by any chance? I mean, they're an amazing resource in the community, and this is what they do.
Yep.
And they have fine-tuned it. I mean, incredibly effective. So if you don't have a relationship with them, like I would, she's gonna kill me for doing this, but like they should be at your,
Yes.
Very familiar with
at your
Robin
cafes
McKay.
and, you
Yeah,
know, these
she's
are,
good.
like, this is what they do.
Yes.
It would just be more seamless, I think. So I put that out there as, I think, I mean, we should talk about kind of, well, we hopefully will have some, ask for follow-up on that.
Absolutely.
The other thing that I want to talk about, that was a focus of the analysis, is the treatment of transgender inmates. And I know that there's been a positive ongoing dialogue with advocates in the community, and I certainly appreciate that. But the data on the number of people who are in restrictive housing, and that's 22 hours out of the day that somebody is segregated from the larger community, it's very, very concerning. And it disproportionately affects that community. So I'd like your comment on that, as well as the medical manual that I know that you have been working on, and when that will see the light of day.
Thank you. And if I may, Madam Chair, my assistant secretary that is actually overseeing the charge for transgenders here, may I ask her to come up? Sure. Thank you. Angelina.
Thank you very much for that question, Madam Chair. I'll take it in two particular parts, one regarding restrictive housing and the second regarding the policies. The first is that we are, I would say, certainly in partnership with the Deputy Secretary of Operations, taking a closer look at all of our practices and our policies. We've seen, I would say, effective changes in triggered by our COMAR revisions, and we're looking to continue that work to interrupt as much as possible and leverage alternate sanctions that do not carry a sanction of assignment to restrictive housing and how we respond to issues. And we've been working on alternate pathways with our Director of Mental Health Services to create more supportive alternatives within general populations for some of those individuals. And this is not specifically to transgender individuals, but they do benefit from these alternate pathways, who maybe have recurrent patterns of ending up within SEG. And one of those is specifically, and this is something that's been spoken to repeatedly, the refusal of return to general populations out of concerns for personal safety. We know that the more alternatives that we can create that provide that safety, the truer a choice to a general population people will be able to make.
Sorry for the interruption, but just so I'm clear, are you saying that people who are transgender are opting because of safety concerns to self-segregate?
That is a trend that we see not just within that population, but certainly for any individual who feels vulnerable. That is something that we see a lot. I would say about a third of placements are often because of refusing a housing move. And so that's an indication to us as a department that we can take a look at how we facilitate transfers, take a look at how we are able to work with people to find a housing solution that works for them so that we can move out of that circular pattern. And more than half of our sanctions do not involve a sanction to restrictive housing. So that's a number that we're tracking closely, certainly within my units now, so that we can continue that positive trend to reduce the usage of restrictive housing. On the topic of the policies, I will say my eternal gratitude to our colleagues at TRAC who really took the time to go through the profound revisions that we've made within the medical evaluations policies, which were paramount for equity for that population. That is part of a 200-page manual, and we have been working as a department to revise that for the entire population. So that is in legal review as we continue to work through those last revisions. It was a best practice in consultation with our lawyers and our clinical services team to issue that as a wholesale change in practice. That's the only reason that that chapter, which was one of the ones that was done earlier, has not moved forward into being officially in place. We wanted to have consistency and training for our contractual medical staff as we move forward to that. But we are thankfully close to the end mark on that, as well as two other policies, specifically around identification upon intake to the department, which is that earliest opportunity that we have to change the way that we have facilitated individuals being able to access those accommodations that help them not just have their gender affirmed as much as possible within our policies, but also contribute to those earlier flags for PREA and those earlier flags that we can have to just try and promote safety as much as possible, regardless of where someone is housed.
So two things, if our friends in OAG are listening, I assume some of this review is in their hands. That would be good to move on. And then with regard to the risk assessments that you make, which I assume are right at the beginning, as you said, that's what you're going to look at and make housing decisions based on that. I guess I just also have concerns about our being in compliance with PREA.
Thank you. And that's one of the changes, that's one of the three policies that's with them for approval, and they're being reviewed together because they do impact one another. One of the changes that we made based on looking at our PREA data was pulling out additional screening criteria to flag appropriately that elevated risk that transgender individuals face in a carceral setting, separate from other factors that could facilitate more protective avenues being applied there.
Okay. Any other questions from anybody? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I know we have a number of people who have signed up to testify, and we will move to them. If you can leave those chairs there, that would be great. We'll just go in order. I'm going to butcher this name. Oluwadamilo Olanyan, Pat Moran, and Jamie Green. Whoever would like to begin. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Patrick Moran. I am the very proud president of AFSCME Council 3. We represent thousands of correctional officers, case managers, and correctional staff across the state of Maryland. Our staff is our members are working in unsustainable conditions. They have an enormous responsibility keeping individuals in a correctional institution safe while also enduring harsh conditions due to the lack of resources, where people are not getting rehabilitative services that are going to allow them to reintegrate into society. This goal of reintegrating people cannot be achieved without safe staffing, safe facilities, and right now our correctional system fails to meet those standards. This past year, in 2025, 13 incarcerated individuals were murdered in state correctional facilities. That is a 40% increase from 2024. 3 were killed in January alone. At the same time, assaults have skyrocketed between inmates and against staff. Our officers are significantly understaffed and pushed to the brink on overtime. In fiscal year 2025, DPSCS spent approximately $220 million in overtime, and two job classifications, Correctional Officer 2 and Correctional Officer Sergeant, accounted for 53% of all state personnel overtime cost. This is happening at the same time our correctional population is trending upward from pre-pandemic lows. The system is unsustainable. Correctional staff will continue to burn out, and the goal of rehabilitating individuals back into society will not succeed without changes to our system. We're asking the committee to reject any cuts in positions of frontline correctional staff and to invest in our state employees. This session, our union is fighting for a 2% COLA and a step increase for all state employees. For county detention employees, Washington County, for example, offers a starting salary of $55,000 with annual step increases and competitive pensions, and those are surrounding 3 facilities in Hagerstown. In Montgomery County, they start at $60,000. Finally, I want to share, I know I'm going over here, but this is a lot, Madam Chair. Finally, I want to share with you the committee, the union busting activity by Centurion, who provides the private prison health care in the facilities. This past year, medical staff employed by Centurion voted to join AFSCME. However, Centurion waged an aggressive anti-union campaign at NBCI and WCI to defeat our union. They spent state money on state time using state resources to run their anti-union campaign, therefore denying incarcerated individuals the ability to get health care services. I know that this secretary said something different, but I don't see how the two can coexist. So something has to be done along that. That is fraud. That is plain and simple fraud. You are billing the state for something and you're not providing those services. Thank you. I please hope you will investigate this matter further.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Oluwadamilola Olanio. I am Correctional Sergeant and I serve as the proud president of AFSCME Local 1678, representing correctional staff at JSO Correctional Institutions. Correctional staff face demanding conditions every single day they show up to work. We are short-staffed. We are drafted for mandatory overtime. We are experiencing increased rate of assault and violence. As this committee knows, the rate of assault against staff increased by 127% from fiscal year 21 to fiscal year 25. Incarcerated individuals need educational, recreational, religious, and vocational programming as part of their rehabilitation. But when we are short-staffed, they cannot get the programming they need. In 2017, a bipartisan bill, HB 232, was passed by this body requiring DPSCS in partnership with our union to conduct a staffing analysis to determine the amount of posts we need to safely operate our facilities. In 2023, DPSCS contracted a vendor, Moss Group, who determined we needed approximately 2,500 additional correctional officer positions to safely staff our facilities. In 2025, DPSCS contracted an outside vendor, Creative Corrections, to conduct the 2025 staffing analysis. Creative Corrections found in 2024 across our facilities that correctional officers logged 3.4 million hours of overtime. This amount of overtime equates to the workload of 1,659 full-time correctional officers. Instead of hiring outside contractors, we should just save the money and do what the legislature intended in 2017. This should be a joint survey with our union. I have been a correctional officer in a state prison for over 15 years, and I'm asking that you support the staff by providing fair compensation for state employees. Thank you.
All right. My name is Jamie Grace Alexander, and I'm a passionate advocate of criminal justice reform, and I was led to this work through listening to the experiences of my community. As you know, members of the transgender community face staggering statistics of violence while incarcerated. According to national statistics gathered by the Vera Institute, as much as 90% of transgender people have experienced solitary confinement during their incarceration, often as the only housing option provided for their protection. According to DPSCS's most recent report, litigation has cost the department over $500,000 between 2022 and 2025 exclusively over their transphobia, and most of that was paid out just last year. I'm also a leader within the Trans Rights Advocacy Coalition, and in the past we brought forward legislation to change these horrible conditions of confinement for members of our community. But after pursuing legislation for several years, we sought the help of this committee to collect more data through budget language. The subsequent report gave us some information that we were looking for, like a rough estimate of the amount of transgender people currently in DPSCS's custody, but failed in other critical areas. However, this report started a dialogue between us and DPSCS, and for this I want to express our extreme gratitude for the reports issued in 2023, 2024, and 2025. Since 2024, we've had dozens of meetings with the department, thanks to Angelina. This has been tremendous progress, but it's moving slowly. We have had the opportunity to provide feedback on some of their policies so far, but concerningly, transgender women still experience violence today in facilities built to house males. We deeply appreciate the ability to work directly with the department, but it's not a replacement for the necessary and important data required by the legislature. The amount of data provided by DPSCS has steadily improved year over year and helped to guide our advocacy with people inside. We look forward to continuing to work with the department and urge this body to reissue budget language that holds DPSCS accountable for describing their steadily improving treatment of members of our community, because this problem only grows in darkness. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Patrick, because I'm not familiar with what you mentioned and the secretary alluded to, could you just briefly shed a little more light on that?
Last year, the nurses at WCI and NBCI, which are the two facilities in Cumberland, in addition to medical staff in one of the facilities in downtown Baltimore, which is another union was working to organize. When the nurses there and medical staff there decided to organize, they had a campaign, they had an election, it was an NLRB election, and Centurion, the healthcare vendor, who, by the way, we have a contract within the state of Illinois, so they are familiar with this process, and they did not launch an anti-union campaign there. Decided to run an anti-union campaign, taking the nurses and healthcare staff one-on-one, counseling them against having a union, urging them to vote no against the union in the prisons themselves, in the health facilities themselves, on state time, using state resources. And, you know, you can try to deny that denied health care to people, but you know, if they were not, they were there supposed to be doing their job. They weren't doing their job. They were being counseled by this corporation to incite them to vote no on a union campaign. So therefore, just by sheer logic, you cannot provide health care when you are being told, go into an office and listen to our anti-union counselor, taking you off your job. So that is fraud in my book. You are charging the state for a service that you were supposed to be providing, and you aren't providing that service. You are engaged in anti-union activity on the state's time and on the state's dime.
Did you file a complaint?
We spoke to the administration about it. We spoke to, and there's labor board charges going on. We have a hearing coming up in March, unbelievably, that quick, which is amazing and surprising. And, you know, we told the department about it. Oh, we didn't know. So they didn't know that they had people from this corporation coming into their facility that had nothing to do with providing health care, right? Their CEO even came in. Their CEO came all the way out to Western Maryland to counsel people against joining the union. that came into the facilities, had these meetings. Their anti-union lawyers, counselors, whatever they want to call them, came into the facilities. Our members cannot go into those parts of the facilities, right? I, as a union representative, cannot go into those parts of the facilities due to healthcare laws, right? But they allowed these anti-union counselors and the CEO to come in there and do whatever they wanted to do on the unions, on the state's time and the state's dime.
Was there an election?
There was.
And did they vote to?
And our members voted yes. But the day after that, the company filed a charge to dismiss the election, even though they lost, even after, they pulled all that nonsense, so.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All right, the next three people, Michelle Cueto, John Sexton, Ruth Carlock, and actually I'm going to call up to Michael Tynes. Just be in the batter's box or in the warm-up.
Ruth isn't here.
Okay. Great, thanks. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Chairwoman. First of all, I want to thank the Secretary and her staff, Keith Dickinson and others that have worked with the Mother's Cry over the past year to find solutions and a way forward. As a result of those conversations, we have seen progress at ECI, the most populous prison, state prison in Maryland. I also want to thank Senator Salling for his meeting with me the other day. We intend to meet with senators and delegates throughout to inform them of the critical nature of conditions in prisons behind the walls. I'm happy that we will meet with the Secretary on Monday to try to find a way forward. There are things right now that are happening. My son has been there 9 years. The President's son has been there 19 years. We have a population of over 16,000 people behind the walls. Those people are reaching out to us and telling us about the egregious conditions. When you don't have sufficient correctional officers, according to existing protocol, it means that programs are canceled, or you're on lockdown 23 hours out of 24 hours, and this is not in lockdown. This is not an administrative segregation. And what that means is during extreme heat. I've given 2 interviews with WMAR, both in 2024, 2025, and I alerted DPSCS to these conditions where extreme heat, if you're in lockdown 23 hours out of a day, those temperatures with climate change are rising to over 100 degrees. So this is not sustainable. It's a contributor toward degradation of human beings living behind the walls. So the other thing that I want to bring forward to this committee is, and I raised this and left some documents with Senator Salling, is the fact that in the capital improvement budget, I don't see any resources put forward there or in the operational budget to clean ducts, which are, significantly overdue. If there's any airflow, that's blocked. The significant infestation of rodents that contaminates the food on a daily basis. And with that, I conclude my remarks unless you give me a grace of 30 seconds.
Got 30 seconds.
Okay. So I just want to say that we would ask that we support the union in whatever is necessary to attract up to the 2,500. We will talk to the Secretary about that. But on the capital improvement, whether it's in the operational budget, capital improvement, that needs to be revised to include major structural repairs in the state prisons. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman, committee members, distinguished committee members. My name is John Sexton. I was locked up for 37 years. I just got out several months ago. I'm just here. I want to give you a little bit of practicalness about what this budget does and what it means and what it isn't doing. The personnel makes up 60% of the budget, 60% of the budget. Now, for that 60% of the budget, I can tell you most of the time, half the time at least now, people aren't going to school. They're not going to the programming. They're not being rehabilitated. They're not able to engage. A lot of what is the problems that you're seeing, the murders, the increase in drug use, the increase in disciplinary segregation, the increase in assaults, the increase in staffing problems, that is a direct correlation of people being stressed out and contained 23, 24 hours a day. What happens is it's like a powder keg. When you put two human beings in a little 8x10 box and you stress them out constantly over time, over a long period of time, you begin to have this. This is the manifestation of that. I would ask you and urge you to try to figure out why you're spending 60% of your budget and there's nothing happening. It's like you're giving them the money to do that. Well, you need to find a way to make it happen. I understand that there's problems retaining and recruiting people, but you need to find a way to function and to operate on some kind of level. Secondly, the inmate medical makes up about a quarter of the budget. I can tell you now, it's not worth a quarter of the budget that they're getting. They get cursory service at best. Most of the time, they don't get that. The operations, the critical care that they need to keep them healthy is very sparse at best. It's amazing to me that we're willing to spend that much money on medical services to outside contractors that are outside the state when we have the best universities for medical care in the entire country, entire world. I would urge you to take time to find out what these dollars are going for and what they're not, because I don't think what your image and what you think that's happening is what's actually going on. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Michael Tynes, Legal Fellow for the University of Baltimore School of Law Center for Criminal Justice Reform. I'm here along with members of TRAC to address the department's October 2025 report and the urgent need for continued budgetary oversight regarding the treatment of incarcerated trans and gender nonconforming individuals. We are deeply grateful for the efforts the department has made since our testimony on these issues in 2024. There is progress and good faith, as has been articulated today. However, as described in detail in our joint response to the report and written testimonies shared with this committee, our analysis highlights ongoing concerns and rights violations in the following areas: housing policies resulting in a persistent use of unsafe practices and conditions, continued deficiencies in the investigative and complaint process, missing data, including critical information regarding PREA violations, and finally, a heavy reliance on restrictive housing, including as a means of protection. Decades of research have shown that solitary confinement causes long-lasting psychological harm, including anxiety, psychosis, paranoia, depression, PTSD, just to name a few. Incarcerated individuals who have spent time in solitary confinement face a much higher risk of suicide and self-injury. So, the transparency that we have had today is achieved only because this body demanded it through the budget process. However, the department's report still lacks critical data on gender-affirming care and outcomes for housing requests. TRAC urges this body to repeat the budget narrative process again this year. It's critical that we maintain this protective oversight to ensure the department continues to move toward policies that respect the rights and dignity of trans individuals under its charge. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you very much for being here.
Can I just mention that the president has submitted written testimony today? Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes, is there anyone else who had signed up or thought they signed up for DPSCS corrections? All right, thank you very much. That concludes that hearing. Next, we are going to move to the Maryland Department of Emergency Management and invite up Yashodhara Rai.
Thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. I am Yashodhara Rai, and I'll be presenting the fiscal 27 budget analysis for the Maryland Department of Emergency Management, or MDEM. The graph on page 1 shows that the fiscal 27 budget for MDEM increases by $65.6 million, or 7.5%. This is after accounting for proposed deficiencies and contingent reductions. Turning to page 2, there are 3 proposed fiscal 26 deficiency appropriations for a total of $430,000. This includes $400,000 in special funds from the Strategic Energy Investment Fund, SEIF, This is contingent on a provision in the Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act, BRFA, of 2026 that expands allowable uses of CEF. Another $30,000 in general funds are deficiency is included to support rent expenses. The third proposed deficiency is a fund swap that reduces $3.2 million in federal funds and adds $3.2 million in special funds from the 911 Trust Fund and is also applied to fiscal 27 allowance. This deficiency is also contingent on a BRFA provision that expands allowable uses of 911 trust funds. The allowable uses of 911 trust funds are set federally and restricted to 911 services. The implementation of this BRFA provision may lead to a non-compliance with the federal regulations. MDEM and the Department of Budget and Management, DPM, are working to resolve these potential legal issues. MDEM should comment on how it plans to cover $3.2 million in reduced federal funds if the proposed BRFA provision to expand allowable uses of 911 trust funds cannot be implemented. Exhibit 1 on page 3 shows a total of $944.2 million in the department's fiscal 27 allowance after accounting for contingent reductions. 73% of the allowance relate to pass-through federal grants, mainly for presidentially declared disasters. A breakdown of these pass-through federal grants is shown in Exhibit 2 on page 4, along with the grant category. Pages 5 through 7 highlights the impacts of the recent federal changes for these grant categories. Some of the highlights are decrease in the total urban area security initiative funding, which is under the preparedness grants category, from $44 million in federal fiscal 24 to $25 million in federal fiscal 25. The fiscal 27 budget, as introduced, includes a total of $20.6 million in federal funds through various preparedness grants. The Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities program under the mitigation grants, which was eliminated by the current federal administration in April of 2025, has now been restored by a federal court ruling. MDEM's fiscal 27 budget includes about $507,000 in federal funds through the mitigation grants. And as mentioned earlier, the disaster grants make up the highest federal fund sources in MDEM's budget. While the federal government has not provided direction regarding a change in disaster assistance policy, the state's request for a major disaster declaration for flooding in Western Maryland was denied in May of 2025. Exhibit 3 on page 7 shows the total federal disaster aid the state has received from fiscal 2010 to 2025. This excludes any COVID-related assistance. On an average, the state has received $21.4 million per year over the reporting period. No federal disaster aid was received in fiscal 24 and 25. MDEM should comment on how it plans to continue its operations if federal funds are further reduced. DLS recommends adopting a committee narrative for a report on federal fund sources and the department's contingency plan if these federal funds are not available as anticipated. Beginning at the bottom of page 7 highlights the two funds the state maintains to support costs related to disasters. The Catastrophic Event Account, which is administered by DBM, and the State Disaster Recovery Fund, which is administered by MDEM. In December 2025, the Spending Affordability Committee recommended that the state maintain a total of at least $15 million in the two funds. The total closing balance at the end of fiscal 27 is expected to be $12.9 million for the two funds. This is $2.1 million less than the recommendation. MDEM and DBM should comment on how the agencies plan to maintain the total combined balance of $15 million for the two funds. Exhibit 4 on pages 8 and 9 show the proposed budget change. 98% or $64.6 million of the budget increase is attributable to the rise in grants supported by 911 surcharge revenue for county shares. MDEM should comment on the reason for the significant increases in these grants. Bottom of page 9 highlights the two BRFA provision. The first BRFA provision expands allowable uses of CEF to include programs and initiatives related to resiliency efforts. This provision swaps a total of $1.5 million that includes $305,000 in general funds and $1.2 million in federal funds with special funds from CEF. DLS recommends amending the contingent budget bill language to align more closely with the BRFA provision. Another provision expands the allowable uses of 911 Trust Fund, which was discussed earlier in the presentation. Personnel data appears at the top of page 10. One new administrator position is added in fiscal 27, and as of December 31st, 2025, the department reported 13 vacant positions, of which 2 positions have been vacant for more than a year. DLS recommends deleting the 1 new position and reclassifying one of the existing long-term vacant positions. Moving on to the first key observations, the Resilient Maryland Revolving Loan Fund is a special non-lapsing fund that provides low or no interest loans for local resiliency projects. The fiscal 23 budget included $25 million in pay-as-you-go general funds for this fund. MDEM spent $10.1 million in fiscal 25, of which $10 million was awarded to 2 Howard County projects, which is shown in Exhibit 5 on page 11. MDEM also received $6.5 million in federal funds in fiscal 25 that are yet to be spent. The estimated current fund balance is $14.3 million, including interest earnings, and MDEM has received loan applications for 5 more projects. MDEM should comment on the status of the 2 projects that received the loan funds in fiscal 25, status of the remaining 5 projects, planned utilization of the $6.5 million in federal funding, and the agency's plan to apply for the federal fiscal 25 funds. DLS also recommends adopting a committee narrative with similar details. The second key observation on the state and local cybersecurity efforts begin at the bottom of page 12. These efforts are supported by the federal, state, and local cybersecurity grant program, which is funded through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, IIJA. This program was originally for a 4-year federal fiscal year cycle and was supposed to end in federal fiscal 25. As part of the recent federal spending authorization, this program has now been extended through September of 2026. MDEM acts as the state administrative agency for this program and should ensure that 80% of the federal grant is provided to local governments. Exhibit 6 on page 13 shows the federal grants received from federal fiscal 22 through 24. A total of $4.9 million of the federal grant received in federal fiscal 23 was awarded to local projects. Details of these projects are in Appendix 4. Application process for federal fiscal 24 is expected to begin in early this year. MDEM should comment on awarding the federal fiscal 24 awards, and DLS recommends adopting a committee narrative for report on the program and fund distribution. The third key observation appears on page 14 and highlights the repeat finding from the Office of Legislative Audit, OLA, which was reported in its final 25 budget closeout transaction. OLA reported that MDEM was unable to provide documentation for a total of $86 million in accrued federal fund revenue entries or recovery of these funds. Of these, $77.9 million were for expenditures made on behalf of other state agencies, which need to be approved by the respective agencies and enables MDEM to request federal reimbursement. The report noted that some of these expenses dated back to July 2020. And as of September 2025, these expenditures were not approved by the agencies and no federal reimbursement requests had been made. The deadline to request federal reimbursement was December 29, 2025. MDEM should update on how much of the $86 million has been recovered and whether the agencies have approved requests for federal reimbursements. DLS recommendations appear on pages 15 through 19. Recommendation 1 deletes funding for 1 new position. Recommendations 2 through 6 modifies budget bill language to closely align with BRFA provision. Recommendations 7 through 9 are committee narrative for various reports, and recommendations 10 through 12 modifies budget bill language for fiscal 26 proposed deficiencies to closely align with BRFA provision. Exhibit 7 on pages 20 and 21 provides an update on the IIJA grants as of January 2026, and pages 22 through 28 are appendices. This is the end of my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? All right, thank you. Mr. Secretary.
Chairman Hettleman, members of the committee, thank you for having me here today. For the record, I am Russell Strickland, Secretary of the Department of Emergency Management. excuse me. I appreciate the opportunity to update the committee on the department's activities and address the items contained in the operating budget analysis prepared by the Department of Legislative Services. I'd like to acknowledge and thank Yashu, our new DLS budget analyst for this fiscal year. She's worked hard to understand the intricacies of our budget. Accompanying me today is Deputy Secretary Chaz Eby and our Director of Mission Support, Janet Moncrief, who will be available to answer questions as needed. You have our written responses to the DLS analysis. I want to be respectful of the committee's time today, but given the recent attention on national emergency management policy and the impact of federal actions on states and locals, I wanted to take a moment to update you on what we know at this time. Federal grants, as DLS notes in our analysis, MDEM relies primarily on federal grants for staffing, equipment, training, and exercises related to disaster preparedness, response, and recovery. Over the past year, we have worked closely with the Attorney General's office on several lawsuits challenging changes made by USDHS to these grants, which would have harmed Maryland's preparedness, response, and disaster risk reduction activities at both the state and local levels. We're happy to report that these lawsuits were successful in overturning the most impactful changes, including the restoration of the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities Grant Program and requiring the administration to remove newly added terms and conditions to our preparedness grants, which would have been challenging to meet at the state and local level. Unfortunately, the news is not all positive. Preparedness grants to the National Capital Region were slashed by nearly 50%, reducing the award from $44 million last year to $25 million this year. And Maryland's State Homeland Grants program was also decreased from $6.3 million to $4.9 million. And while one of the lawsuits Maryland joined successfully prohibited the termination of the BRIC grant program, BRIC is a largely competitive award program. We have not received any updates from FEMA on the future of this program or anticipated award dates for open grant years, leaving a number of jurisdictions in limbo. Federal disaster assistance policy. Maryland has also experienced what appears to be a shift in federal practice, if not in formal policy, for federal disaster assistance. In previous years, if a state and local government met federally established damage thresholds for events outlined in the Stafford Act, federal disaster aid was nearly guaranteed to follow. Federal disaster aid has always been at the sole discretion of the president by law, but FEMA's established parameters providing benchmarks for disaster assistance. States and locals have planned around these federally established benchmarks for years, assuring responsibility for any and all disasters which don't hit those thresholds. Based on our experience in Western Maryland and other experiences around the nation, it appears that meeting these damage thresholds will no longer guarantee federal assistance. MDEM is acutely aware of these shifts and is working closely with key state agencies, including DBM, as well as local governments, the private sector, and nonprofits to assess our current capabilities, our potential gaps, and how Maryland can best prepare our response and recovery efforts in light of the now unpredictable nature of federal disaster aid. State and local responsibility for disaster response. There's been a lot of national dialogue around shifting the responsibility of disasters, quote unquote, back where it belongs with states and locals. That does a disservice to the local responders and states which respond to the majority of events impacting their community that never make it to the federal disaster aid request process. In just the last year, MDEM has responded to natural hazards like flooding and winter storms, technological interruptions like the recent national Verizon outage, and environmental emergencies like the fuel spill in Baltimore City Harbor. MDEM cannot replace FEMA. We are committed to serving the residents of this state and in working in tandem with local governments to reduce risk to communities, to coordinate the state's response and recovery to disasters. I thank the committee for the opportunity to provide these updates on the federal impacts on the state emergency management system, and I and the staff are available for any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Senator Rosepet.
This is a question both for the analyst and for the agency. On the first page of the analysis, I see this chart where the federal money went up dramatically from 25 to 26 and then continues to go up to 27. And I can't square that in my head with all the things you just said.
So much of that is pass-through money, such as the COVID relief.
So it's still a lot of COVID money?
Oh, we've processed nearly $2 billion worth of that.
So this is so these big numbers are the trail of the COVID money?
Yes.
Got it. That answers my question. Thank you.
Any other questions? Actually, so what is sort of a normal budget for you? Pre-COVID? I know that's a tough question.
It is, and if we would pull all of it out, that if we had a $20 million operating fund, we could exist without any federal money. Does that make sense? With where we currently are and our current staffing and capabilities.
Without any disasters?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And the whole disaster assistance for the future is changing. So that's where things like the State Disaster Recovery Fund need to be funded, State Catastrophic Event Fund need to be maintained, that we would have that available to us. In the past, without any question, and still current today, we would tell you that 80% of our budget operationally is federal money, 20% is state
Is what?
money.
I'm sorry.
80% is federally.
Yes.
Is federal money, 20% is state money. And with the decline in the federal money, we've got to be shifting ourselves off of that.
I need to ask about the audit, and I need to ask about the collections of outstanding funds. Can you walk me through exactly how that works? I mean, it is other agencies that are foregoing federal funds. If you can shed a little light for me on exactly the process for this
I can give it to you in
reimbursement.
my simplest terms, and Chaz could take you through, exactly what the federal code requires with all of that. But the bottom line is, you'll see these large numbers with us of federal money. That's federal money that has been, in my words, obligated to us to take care of damages that have been identified through a process with FEMA, state, and local officials. So they've come up with that. Hence we meet the threshold. We are identified for this amount of money. We don't have it sitting in a piggy bank. The federal government does. So the projects are allocated, they do the work, they ask for reimbursement, and that's how it comes down. And that's money that's in there that there are agencies as well as some local jurisdictions as well as some hospital entities that still have COVID money due to them.
Still have COVID money due to them. So they've undertaken these projects. They've paid somebody, right? They've paid contractors.
They've gone out. Everybody spends before the federal government gives.
Right.
So they have spent, and the majority of that amount that's shown in the closeout is in process with FEMA.
And it's your obligation because it came through you to
Well, and to some
pound
degree,
them?
yes.
Or?
Yes, that's the easiest way. Yes.
Okay. And do you get help on that from other agencies?
We do a lot of poking.
Okay. Thank you. We can leave it at that. Senator Salling.
You took mine. That's what I was going to, because I see the different departments here that are, I guess you could somewhat say, are responsible to move forward with their audits or their reimbursements.
Yes, their reimbursements.
And from what I'm seeing, there's a lot that was there. And for some reason, it had to be in a timely fashion to making sure when their audits or when they're done, that reimbursement's there. But the recovery was over almost $700 million. And then the lost investments was almost 20. I'm just kind of concerned that those funds that were there and they didn't move forward or even work together to find this? I mean, how can we do better than this? Because I think we're letting the people down.
Yeah, and I can't, there's this sense that the money is sitting there, but it's really sitting at the federal government.
At the federal level, yeah.
So, and I don't even understand in conversation with the auditors how we would potentially receive interest off that money, because it's basically been obligated to us. And it's through a drawdown process with the federal government that we get it.
Yeah.
And we've been careful through the years in that you may give us your request for reimbursement, and we say, okay, we send it to FEMA first, get the money from FEMA, then give it to you. There are occasions where we actually go out on the limb, make the reimbursement right away, and then pull it back from FEMA. Right now, FEMA is probably in the neighborhood of at least 12 or more months behind in the drawdowns and the entire process, basically since January 20th of last year, when there were major changes and all disruptions with FEMA. So we're also in that game.
Is that a normal time frame or? No. What's the time frame it usually is for that?
If we don't have the additional review processes and you put in a request to us, it should be something, within just a month or two, right. You should be getting the money back. Again, if what you give us and we review, we make sure we don't send anything forward to FEMA that we know they're going to reject. So we'll work with you to make sure it's correct before it heads to FEMA. And that timeline can be depend upon how, you work with us.
Yeah.
Because you have the data. That thing.
I'm going to flag one more thing, and it was mentioned in the analysis, but a colleague who follows this very closely flagged the $3.2 million 911 fund swap as saying that was not legal. So I don't know if I give you a chance to comment on that.
DBM and we are working closely to figure that out. Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Great.
And straighten that out.
Thank you. Great. Any other questions? Senator Rosebud?
One more question. Separate from the money and the change in policy, to what extent has FEMA been doged, like nobody's home?
A lot. Initially, I can't give you the most recent numbers, but I know that just in the last couple of weeks, there was another group that was basically given their slips. I can tell you from an experience perspective, I've been wrapped into this now for close to 20 years. And the people I would call on the phone to be able to talk to and get the information I need are not there.
Okay,
so it's an experience question as well as just a numbers question.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you very much.
That concludes the hearing for the Department of Emergency Management. And now we will turn to the Department of Veteran and Military Families. Ms. Rai?
Thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. I am Yashodhara Rai, and I'll be presenting the fiscal 27 budget analysis for the Department of Veterans and Military Families, or DVMF. The graph on page 1 shows that the fiscal 27 budget for the department increases by about $228,000 or 0.3%. Turning to page 2, there are 4 proposed fiscal 26 deficiency appropriations for a total of $5.2 million, which includes $1.3 million in general funds to align funding with increased Charlotte Hall Veterans Home, CHVH resident census in fiscal 25, about $305,000 in general funds for information technology costs, and $250,000 in general funds for additional support for veterans who were impacted by the federal shutdown in October last year. Of the $250,000 for additional support for veterans, $125,000 was transferred to the Veterans Trust Fund, $105,000 to Operation Homefront, $15,000 to the Blue Star Families Maryland chapter, and $5,000 to the Maryland National Guard Food Pantry. The remaining proposed deficiency appropriation includes a total of $2.3 million in special funds and $1 million in federal funds, which are available from prior year retained special and federal funds. On page 3, Exhibit 1 shows a total of $68.7 million in the department's fiscal 27 allowance. 73.5% of the allowance is for the Veterans Home Program, which is the Charlotte Hall Veterans Home. Exhibit 2 on page 4 shows the changes in proposed budget. The largest growth of $1.6 million is attributable to the increase in personnel expenses and is offset by the reduction of about $1.4 million related to the net reductions in expenses for Charlotte Hall after accounting for proposed deficiencies. Personnel data appears on page 5. One position was abolished in fiscal 26 due to the voluntary separation program. The fiscal 27 allowance includes a net reduction of one contractual position. The allowance also includes an increase of $437,000 for annual salary review adjustments. And as of December 31st, 2025, there were 6 vacant positions in the department, which is within the budgeted turnover in fiscal 27. Moving on to key observations, Exhibit 3 on page 7 shows that Charlotte Hall's occupancy has increased as of December 2025 compared to 2024, but is still operating under capacity. As was discussed earlier, the fiscal 27 allowance for Charlotte Hall decreases by 3.6%, which is after accounting for proposed deficiencies. However, since the resident census is increasing, DVMF should comment how the department plans to fund operating costs if the upward trend in resident census continues. The bottom of page 7 highlights the 3 quarterly reports DVMF has submitted. In its first and second quarterly report, DVMF reported an overall federal rating of 1 star for Charlotte Hall Veterans Home. In its third report, the department reported an overall federal rating of 4 stars, with staffing receiving 5 stars, health inspections receiving 3 stars, and quality receiving 2 stars. DVMF should comment on what actions resulted in significant improvement. Additionally, the 3 quarterly reports also listed a total of 108 complaints, which includes 70 complaints from the residents and 38 complaints were family concerns. An annual recertification survey report was submitted on September 10, 2025, which noted that Charlotte Hall was not in compliance with some of the federal regulations. The department should brief on corrective measures taken to address these non-compliances. Another annual survey of Charlotte Hall's resident funds was conducted and no major issues were identified. DLS recommends adopting committee narrative requesting the continued submission of quarterly reports on Charlotte Hall's progress. The bottom of page 8 highlights Maryland Joint Forces Initiative. As required by committee narrative in the 2025 JCR, the department notes that this initiative has formalized partnerships with 33 organizations as of December 2025. About 29,000 service members have been served. The department plans to launch subcommittees for each of the 5 pillars that the initiative is based on, which are employment, food and housing, education, health and wellness, and volunteer service to monitor the initiative's effectiveness and develop relevant performance indicators. DLS recommends adopting a committee narrative for a progress report and the 5-pillar based subcommittees. Page 9 discusses the 2 capital projects, the Crownsville Veterans Cemetery Expansion and Improvements Phase 4 project and the Garrison Forest Veterans Cemetery Expansion and Improvement Phase 6 project. No capital funding is requested for fiscal 27 due to delays in the completion of design, permitting, and other supporting documents. DVMF has also revised the scope of work for both the projects, and the department should comment on the reason for removing certain components for these projects and also provide a timeline for completing the pending scheduled work. Page 11 highlights that no federal award for the new state Veterans Home project was made and has been canceled. Language in the calendar 25 capital budget bill restricted $62.9 million in general obligation bonds in 2 capital projects, the Baltimore Therapeutic Treatment Center and the new Supreme Court of Maryland building for the new Veterans Home. This was contingent on the state receiving conditional federal award prior to June 1st, 2026. This contingent language is removed in the calendar 26 capital budget bill as introduced. On pages 12 and 13 are DLS's 2 recommended actions for various reports. Pages 14 and 15 are appendices, and this is the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Ms. Fry? All right, thank you. Mr. Secretary.
Chair. Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. And for the record, I'm Ed Rothstein. I'm your secretary for Maryland Department, Veterans, Military Families. And up front, I do believe in the 3 Bs: be brief, be accurate, and be gone. And it's happy Friday. I want to thank Yasho Rai and our DLS analyst for her thorough review of our budget request. I am joined here by Elena Charland to answer all the tough questions that you may have in just a bit. Over the past 6 months, it's been a privilege to serve and to lead DVMF in strengthening our services for Maryland's military-connected community. Our vision is in Maryland is relatively simple but strong: to be the best state in the nation for all our veterans and military family members. We've processed over 5,500 VA claims this past year, accounting for about $54.5 million direct payments to our veterans. We've brought in the reach of the Maryland Veterans Trust Fund, as you heard during Veterans Day, providing $250,000 for veterans in need. And we were able to disperse that very quickly and award over $800,000 from the Veterans Trust Fund in individual grants. As also shared in Charlotte Hall Veterans Home, we achieved a significant quality turnaround, going from 1 star to 4 stars in the CMS rating, reinforcing our commitment to safe, high quality, and long-term care. With your support and the governor's allowance, we can build upon our work to modernize and better serve Maryland's veterans, service members, and their families. I am respectful of your time, and with that, we've provided answers to the analysis questions that you've received. And I am in full support of the governor's allowance. I'll be glad to take any questions that you may have at this time.
Are there any questions?
Life is good.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Please keep in touch on Garrison Forest Veterans Cemetery.
Yes.
I got some personal interest in that in my district.
If I can just add one thing, just for clarity's sake, the Sykesville home, the capital project, we are not receiving capital funds as of this fiscal year. The capital project federally is not canceled. It is still a priority, but it's such a low priority in Tier 1 that the money will be trickling into the program. But the program itself is definitely not canceled, and I am looking at serving our elderly veterans across Maryland. So.
And I will say, what do you anticipate? I assume you kind of look forward in terms of the population of the Charlotte Hall. And congratulations on the vast improvements that have been happening there. But in terms of occupancy over the next year or two, do you expect that to remain flat, or do you?
Right now I do. It's right around, give or take, 285 between skilled nursing and the assisted living. I really see it staying around 285 to 300. We do have a ability to go higher for capacity's sake, but right now that's kind of been the trends of the census. So.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
We have a couple of folks who signed up to testify: Marion Charland and Jason Whitmore.
No, that's Elaine.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I apologize.
Okay, sorry.
So it's just me?
It's just you.
I'm all lonely now. It's been a while since I've done this, so bear with me.
Take your time.
So, good afternoon. My name is Jason Whitmore. I work at the Crownsville Veterans Cemetery. I'm also here as a local member of the AFMCE, the local 1803. I'm a caretaker. I take pride in what we do. I'm also a veteran myself. So it's, we keep the grounds completely clean as much as possible, but especially with all the snow, storms, everything else we do. Wish this headache would go away. When family members come to lay their family members to rest, we're the ones that take care of the grave. We're the ones from the chapel to the grave we're the ones doing it. We're the final watch. We lay them to rest. They've earned it. We work very hard to keep the cemetery clean, maintained. We don't just cut grass. A lot of people think that's what we do. We just cut grass. We don't. I want to recognize and express my appreciation for this annual review, the FY27 budget, which provides 2 great increases for caretakers and equipment operator positions in the cemetery program. We compete with the national cemeteries, and they make nearly $20,000 more than we do, and they're doing the same thing. The cost of living, the housing, groceries, and other day items across the board are increasing every year. We're not. Wage increases help workers address impacts of inflation and assist the cost of living while also rewarding performance and experience. The wage increases particularly are critical at a time where inflation is killing us. Many of my fellow state employees are struggling to make ends meet for themselves and their families, and they're performing the same essential public services that we are. They deserve salary enhancements as well. They perform an essential service. Respectfully request that this committee support the salary enhancements and recognize that all state employees need a fair and competitive compensation in order to continue their public service. I noticed I read the budget. It's very hard to do. I don't know how you guys do it. You should be commended for that alone, reading these budgets. That at Crownsville, where the expansion is going to be, we're already almost out of space for one of our columbariums. We will be on the last one by, I want to say, August. So that expansion is going to help out a lot. But we've earned these raises, and so does every other state employee. We're the ones on the ground. We're the ones doing all the work no one else wants to do. Nobody wants to be at a cemetery. We work out in the elements every day. All that snow, we actually came in, me and 2 other employees came in. We volunteered, and we stayed overnight at the shop just to make sure that all the snow was gone at the chapel and the office and the roads, so that way when they came in, because we knew they weren't going to cancel burials, and we knew the families were still going to want to do them. So we cleaned, it took us, 36 hours, we got it done. So, this is really important.
Well, thank you very much for your service. Thank you for coming here and sharing your experiences with us. And I know this winter has been especially difficult. So I can only imagine what it's been like for you. So thank you. Are there any questions?
We're happy to do it.
Any questions?
I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Very well.
That will that will conclude the subcommittee's hearings this afternoon. Thank you.